Fists slammed against consoles, jaws clenched in rage, eyes narrowed in defiance. The humans on the bridge of the UES Retribution simmered with barely contained fury as the UNA's commander's face loomed on the view screen, his threats echoing through the room like the toll of a funeral bell. After 2 centuries of peace bought with blood and sacrifice, the reptilian aliens had returned, their ships darkening Earth's skies, their armies poised to grind humanity beneath their boots once more. "Surrender now," Mizar hissed, "and your species will be granted a place as servants of the UNAs. Resist, and you will be annihilated." Mizar's face contorted with rage. "Then you have sealed your fate, human," he snarled. "Prepare to be destroyed." The transmission cut out, plunging the bridge into silence. On the view screen, the UNA's fleet began to advance, their weapons bristling with deadly promise. Marcus turned to face his crew, his eyes hard with determination. "This is it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This is what we've trained for, what we've bled for. The UNAs think they can break us, but they're wrong. We'll show them what happens when you provoke the wrong humans." He turned back to the view screen, to the sea of alien ships bearing down on them. The fate of Earth, of the entire human race, hung in the balance. If they failed here, if they fell to the UNAs, it would mean the end of everything they held dear. But Marcus had no intention of failing. He had a plan, a desperate gambit that just might turn the tide. It would take every ounce of human ingenuity, every scrap of courage and determination they could muster. But if it worked... He allowed himself a small, grim smile. The UNAs thought they knew what they were up against. They thought they could break humanity's spirit with their threats and their bluster. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Marcus slammed his hand on the console as the view screen showed the UNA's ships charging forward. "All hands to battle stations. Raise shields and arm all weapon systems." The human fleet raced to meet the enemy head-on. Space erupted in a cacophony of destruction. The blinding flashes of energy weapons, the silent explosions of missiles. But the UNA's ships absorbed the humans' desperate volleys, their superior shields holding strong. Purple beams lanced out from the alien fleet, burning through human hull plating. The Retribution lurched as an energy blast struck its flank. Sparks burst from overloaded terminals, showering the bridge crew. Acrid smoke filled the air. "Damage report," Marcus roared over the din of battle. Marcus clenched his jaw, knuckles white on the edge of a sparking console. The human ships were being torn apart. They couldn't match UNA's firepower. This was a slaughter. A searing white light flooded the view screen. Marcus squinted against the glare as a UNA's dreadnought detonated, consumed by a massive energy beam. He spun to the tactical station. The officer there looked equally shocked. Then who? In moments, a third of the once proud UNA's armada was reduced to spinning wreckage. The survivors fled, falling back in disarray. "Sir, we're being hailed," the comms officer said slowly. It's not the UNAs." On screen. A human face appeared, a man in a black uniform adorned with a strange insignia. His eyes held an eerie yellow glint. "This is Captain Varus Krell of the ISS Shadowblade," he said, his gaze boring into Marcus. "We come not as an alien race, but as Earth's forgotten defenders. We split from the rest of humanity centuries ago to prepare for this day, to improve our technology in secret, until the time came to strike and destroy the alien threat forever. At long last, that time is now." Marcus stared at the view screen, his mind spinning. A secret faction of humans hidden for centuries, with technology beyond anything he could imagine. It seemed impossible. "Sir!" The communications officer's shout snapped Marcus back to the present. "Urgent message from Earth Command. They've detected a massive energy surge from the UNA's homeworld. Long-range sensors indicate they've activated some kind of superweapon. The readings are off the scale." Marcus felt ice flood his veins. The UNAs, cornered and desperate, had decided to unleash their ultimate weapon. He turned back to Krell's image on the view screen. "Captain Krell, did you hear that?" Krell nodded, his expression unreadable. "We must act quickly. If the Unas fire that weapon, it could mean the end of everything. Krell's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. We have a plan, but it will require a coordinated strike from both our forces. We must hit the Unas hard and fast, before they have a chance to use their superweapon. Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. He turned to his bridge crew, seeing the same grim determination in their eyes. They might not understand who these mysterious allies were, but they knew what was at stake. "How you heard the man?" Marcus barked. "Coordinate with Earth Command and the ISS fleet. I want targeting solutions and jump calculations now." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Crewmen bent over their consoles, fingers flying across touchscreens. Marcus gripped the arms of his command chair as the fleets prepared for the jump. Engineers braced ship systems, Marines checked their weapons one last time. This was it. The fate of Earth, of the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. "All ships commence jump on my mark," Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. 3, 2, 1, mark. Space twisted and distorted as the human and ISS vessels leaped into FTL, hurtling towards the Unas homeworld and the final confrontation. The stars blurred into streaks of light, then vanished entirely as the ships raced through the void at impossible speeds. On the Retribution's bridge, the crew watched the countdown to real space reversion tick down with bated breath. 10 seconds, 5, 3, 2, 1. The ship snapped back into real space with a shudder, the Unas homeworld looming before them. The alien ships hung in orbit, their weapons already glowing with deadly charge. Space lit up with the glare of 1,000 suns as the human and ISS fleets unleashed a storm of missiles and energy beams. The Unas ships reeled under the onslaught, their shields flickering and failing. Marcus watched the tactical display with a fierce grin as the alien vessels began to wink out one by one, consumed by the firestorm of human vengeance. But even as the Unas fleet crumbled, a new threat emerged. "We're out of time," Krell said. "We have to take out that weapon now before it fires." Marcus nodded, his heart racing. "Agreed. All ships concentrate fire on the superweapon. We only get one shot at this." The human and ISS vessels poured everything they had into the monstrous device rising from the Unas homeworld surface. Missiles and energy beams slammed into its shielded surface, sending gouts of fire and debris spewing into space. But it wasn't enough. The weapon continued to charge, its muzzle glowing with an eerie purple light. Marcus felt despair clutch at his heart. They had come so close only to fail at the final hurdle. The Unas would fire their superweapon, and everything he had fought for, everything he held dear, would be lost. Then a miracle. A single ISS ship, its hull battered and scorched, broke formation and hurtled towards the superweapon like a spear of vengeance. It smashed through the weakened shields and plunged into the heart of the device, disappearing in a blinding flash of light. For a moment there was silence. Then the superweapon exploded, a sun-going nova. The shockwave slammed into the human and ISS fleets, sending ships tumbling end over end. On the Retribution's bridge, Marcus picked himself up from where he had been thrown to the deck. Emergency lights flickered, consoles sparked and sputtered. But on the view screen where the Unas homeworld had been, there was only a slowly expanding cloud of debris. The superweapon was gone, destroyed at the cost of a single brave ship and crew. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. "There will be time for explanations later," Krell said. "For now we must see to our wounded and our ships. The battle is won, but the war is far from over." Marcus nodded, too exhausted to argue. Krell was right. There would be time for questions, for understanding later. For now, they had to focus on the immediate aftermath of the battle. The crew set to work, their faces lined with weariness and grief, but also with the knowledge that they had been part of something greater than themselves. They had stood against the darkness and emerged victorious, even if the cost had been high. Marcus sank back into his command chair, his mind already turning to the future. The Unas had been defeated, but there would be other threats, other challenges to face, and with their mysterious new allies at their side, Perhaps humanity would finally be ready to take its place among the stars, as something more than just another race to be conquered or destroyed. But those were thoughts for another day. For now, Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection, a silent prayer for the fallen, and a wordless thanks for the miracle that had saved them all. In a blinding flash of light, the human and ISS fleets dropped out of FTL, emerging in perfect formation around the Una's homeworld. Energy signatures spiked across the Retribution's sensors as the planet's orbital defenses, caught off guard, struggled to lock onto the sudden swarm of hostile contacts. The void erupted in a storm of crisscrossing energy beams and blossoming missile detonations. The Una's defense platforms, though formidable, buckled under the overwhelming onslaught. ISS ships sliced through enemy shields, their superior tech making short work of the Una's fleet. But the aliens rallied quickly. Una's ships formed a protective sphere around the massive superweapon station, fighting with the desperate ferocity of cornered beasts. They lashed out with every weapon at their disposal, making the attackers pay for every inch of space. The battle raged, losses mounting on both sides. But slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn in favor of the Allied forces. Marcus gripped the arms of his command chair as the Retribution plowed through the enemy lines, her guns never falling silent. Hull plating shuddered and groaned under the strain of repeated impacts. On the view screen, Krell's shadow blade darted through the chaos like a vengeful spectre, surgically picking off Una's vessels. Victory was so close Marcus could taste it. But just as it seemed the battle was all but won, a fresh wave of Una's ships dropped out of FTL, reinforcements, ready to renew the fight. At their head loomed a monstrous warship, twice the size of any vessel on the field. Strange runes pulsed across its hull, emanating an aura of dread that seemed to darken the very void around it. Krell's face, grave and taut, appeared on the view screen. "The Mizar's flagship," he said tightly, "powered by precursor tech. If he's unlocked their secrets—" The implications hung unspoken, but universally understood. The Allied fleets could only watch in mounting horror as the tide of battle turned once more. Mizar's flagship surged forward, its weapons tearing through shields and hulls with sickening ease, leaving only ruin in its wake. Marcus slammed his fist on the console. "All ships, focus fire on that flagship." The human and ally vessels unleashed a storm of missiles and beams, pummeling Mizar's ship. But the behemoth absorbed the barrage, its shields flaring, growing brighter with each impact. It pushed through the onslaught unscathed, weapons lashing out in retaliation, carving burning gashes into the attacking ships. Krill's face flashed onto the view screen, eyes hard. "Captain Johnson, we have to board it. It's the only way to stop that monstrosity." "Board it?" Marcus stared at him incredulously. "How the hell do we do that?" "We've prepared for this," Krill said grimly. "We have the tech, but we need your Marines, the best of the best. Together we can end this nightmare." The shadow blade glided up to the Retribution, locking on with a boarding tube. Marcus gathered his elite Marines, hand-picked warriors, and met Krell's team in the airlock. The Allies were a fearsome sight, encased in shimmering power armor that seemed to drink in the light. Wordlessly, they piled into a sleek assault craft in the Shadow Blade's bay. The ship slipped from the hangar, vanishing from sensors as its cloaking field engaged. It streaked towards Mizar's flagship, latching onto its hull like a metallic parasite. Marcus and Krell led the charge, cutting through the outer plating with searing breach torches. They clambered into the belly of the beast, into the harsh glare of emergency lighting and the blare of alarms. Ona's crewmen boiled out to meet them, filling the corridors with lancing plasma fire. But the tight confines negated their numbers, forcing them into the teeth of the human Marines and their enigmatic allies. The boarders pushed forward, leaving a trail of alien dead in their wake. Deeper they pushed into the flagship, deck by blood-soaked deck. Strange machines pulsed with venomous green light in the walls, ancient precursor relics that made Marcus's skin crawl. Krell's warriors dealt with them, hitting each with focused EM bursts that left them dark and lifeless. The resistance grew fiercer the closer they drew to the bridge. Towering Una's elites in heavy exo-armor crashed into their lines like living tanks. Men died in sprays of blood and screams of agony. But inch by brutal inch, Marcus and Krell battled onwards. Finally, with a last surge of desperate violence, they broke through onto the bridge itself. Una's officers whirled to face them, drawing crackling power blades. At their center stood Mizar, his eyes burning with the light of madness. The final confrontation was at hand. The fate of Earth, the fate of the galaxy itself would be decided in the next few blood-soaked minutes. Marcus raised his rifle, teeth bared in a snarl of defiance, and charged headlong into the fray. The bridge doors exploded inward, shrapnel pinging off bulkheads. Marcus and Krell charged through the smoke, weapons at the ready, their remaining forces close behind. But as the haze cleared, they skidded to a halt, eyes widening at the sight before them. Mizar stood at the center of the bridge, encased in a suit of armor that pulsed with the same eerie green light as the ship's precursor enhancements. His eyes glowed with an unnatural radiance, boring into the intruders. "Foolish humans," he sneered, his voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "You think you can defeat me? I have the power of the precursors at my command." He thrust his hands forward, and searing bolts of emerald energy lanced out towards Marcus and Krell. They hurled themselves aside, the blast scorching the deck where they'd stood a heartbeat before. Around them, the bridge erupted into chaos. Mizar's elite guards, clad in their own powered armor, surged forward to meet the boarders. The crack of gunfire and the sizzle of energy weapons filled the air. Marcus and Krell rolled to their feet, weapons snapping up to return fire. But Mizar just laughed, the shots bending around him as if guided by an invisible hand. Some unseen force field seemed to surround him, absorbing the barrage. Marcus caught Krell's eye across the melee. An unspoken understanding passed between them. There was only one way this could end. As one, they charged at Mizar, pouring every ounce of their fury into the attack. Shots hammered into the Una's leaders' shields, the impacts stuttering their advance. But still they pressed on, closing the gap step by step. Mizar's laughter took on a manic edge as he redoubled his assault. The air around him crackled with energy, the green glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. But it was too late. With a final desperate lunge, Marcus and Krell were on him. Their guns clattered to the deck, forgotten as they grappled with the Una's leader, a tangle of straining limbs and snarling faces. Mizar was strong, his armor-enhanced body possessed of a monstrous might. But Marcus and Krell fought with the strength of those who had nothing left to lose, for whom failure was not an option. Marcus felt bones shatter as his fist connected with Mizar's jaw, the crack lost amid the din of battle. At the same instant, Krell drove a glowing energy blade through a gap in the Una's armor, the point sinking deep into his chest. Mizar stiffened, a look of shock and disbelief crossing his face. Then he crumpled, the light in his eyes dimming as he fell. Around them, the Una's guards faltered, their resolve crumbling as they saw their leader fall. Within moments, they were fleeing, abandoning the bridge to the victorious humans. Marcus and Krell stood panting over Mizar's body, scarcely able to believe that they'd done it. That against all odds, they'd won. But even as the realization sank in, a new urgency gripped them. The superweapon. It was still out there, still a threat. They raced to the bridge's control panels, fingers flying over the alien interfaces, as they searched for a way to shut down the doomsday device. Outside, visible through the viewports, the battle raged on, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Marcus and Krell stare at the holographic display, their hearts pounding as they watch the weapons' shields flicker and waver under the onslaught of the precursor energy. The bridge shudders beneath their feet, the deck plating groaning under the strain. Sparks burst from overloaded consoles, filling the air with the acrid stench of burning circuitry. "That's working," Creel shouts over the din, his eyes locked on the display. "The feedback loop is destabilizing the core." But even as he speaks, warning lights flare across the control panel. The ship's systems, pushed far beyond their limits, are starting to fail. Alarms blare, the sound deafening in the confined space of the bridge. Marcus grips the edge of the console, his knuckles white. He can feel the ship tearing itself apart around them, the precursor enhancements consuming it from within. But he doesn't care. All that matters is stopping that weapon. On the display, the vortex at the heart of the superweapon pulses and writhes, growing more and more unstable by the second. The green light flickers, then begins to dim as the core destabilizes. Almost there, Krell grits out, his fingers a blur on the control panel. Just a little more. Suddenly a massive explosion rocks the ship. Marcus is thrown from his feet, slamming into the bulkhead with bone-crushing force. Stars burst across his vision, the world spinning around him. Through the haze of pain, he sees Krell struggling to pull himself upright, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The bridge is in chaos, consoles sparking and smoking, the deck tilted at a crazy angle. But on the display the superweapon is dark. The vortex is gone, the core nothing more than a twisted mass of molten metal. They've done it. Against all odds, they've won. Marcus drags himself to his feet, every muscle screaming in protest. He staggers to Krell's side, helping the other man up. "We need to get out of here," he says, his voice rough with pain and exhaustion. "This ship is coming apart." Krell nods, his face grim. They turn to limp towards the exit, supporting each other as the ship shudders and groans around them. But even as they move, Marcus can't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. They've struck a blow against the Unas that will be felt across the galaxy. They've shown what humanity is capable of when pushed to the brink. And with allies like Creel and his people at their side, perhaps there's hope for the future after all. As they stumble through the disintegrating corridors of Mizar's flagship, the battle still raging outside, Marcus allows himself a small, tired smile. There will be time to rest, to heal, to rebuild. But for now there is still work to be done. The Unas are beaten but not broken. Earth is safe, but the war is far from over. And Marcus will be there to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. He and Krell burst onto the hangar deck, the ship coming apart in a symphony of tortured metal around them. Through the shimmering containment field, Marcus can see the Retribution, her hull battered and scarred, maneuvering closer. "Come on," he shouts over the roar of escaping atmosphere. "We're getting out of here." They race across the deck, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. The Retribution edges into the hangar, her airlock yawning open like the jaws of salvation. With a final desperate leap, they hurl themselves into the waiting ship, the airlock slamming shut behind them as Mizar's flagship finally tears itself apart in a blinding flash of light. On the Retribution's bridge, Marcus slumps into the command chair, every fiber of his being aching with exhaustion. But there's no time to rest. Not yet. He straightens, facing the view screen and the raging battle beyond. Earth hangs in the void, battered but unbroken. The Unas fleet, without their flagship and their leader, is in disarray. "All ships," Marcus says, his voice ringing with steely determination. "Form up on the Retribution. We're going to hit the Unas with everything we've got. We're going to drive them from our space and make sure they never threaten Earth again." Acknowledgements flood in from the remnants of the human and ally fleets. Ships maneuver into formation, weapons primed and ready. Marcus looks at Krell standing at his side. The other man nods, a fire burning in his eyes. Together they lead the charge as the combined fleet plunges into the heart of the Unas armada. Weapons blazing, engines roaring. The battle is joined anew, the fate of Earth and the galaxy hanging in the balance. But this time Marcus knows the outcome will be different. This time humanity will emerge victorious. No matter the cost. The battle raged on, a desperate struggle for survival amid the wreckage of shattered ships and broken dreams. The remnants of the Unas fleet, their once proud armada reduced to a handful of battered vessels, fought with the fury of the damned, determined to take as many of their enemies with them as they could. The human and ally ships, their hulls scorched and their shields flickering, met the Unas head-on, pouring every ounce of firepower they had into the fray. They knew that every second they bought was precious, a chance for Marcus and Krell to complete their desperate mission. On the bridge of Mizar's flagship, The two warriors worked feverishly at the controls, their faces bathed in the eerie glow of the precursor technology. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed, the ship's systems straining under the immense power being channeled through them. Krell's fingers flew over the control panel, his brow furrowed in concentration. He could feel the ship fighting him, the precursor enhancements resisting his every command. But he pushed on, gritting his teeth as he forced the ancient technology to bend to his will. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the superweapon, its brilliance visible even through the flagship's viewports. Marcus felt his heart stop, certain that they had failed, that the weapon had fired, and that all was lost. But then he realized that the light was not the sickly green of the weapon's core, but a searing, brilliant white. The weapon's shields flared and then shattered, the vortex at its heart spinning out of control. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slammed his hand down on the comms panel, his voice booming across the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, retreat immediately. Get as far away from the weapon as you can." Across the battlefield, the human and ally ships disengaged from the Unas, their engines flaring as they turned tail and fled. Damaged and battered, they pushed their reactors to the limit, desperate to outpace the coming destruction. On the flagship, Marcus and Krell raced through the shuddering corridors, explosions ripping through the ship around them. Bulkheads buckled and conduits ruptured, spewing sparks and debris across their path. They reached their boarding craft just as a massive explosion tore through the flagship's hull, the shockwave throwing them off their feet. Scrambling into the tiny ship, they slammed the hatches shut and fired the engines, rocketing away from the doomed vessel. Behind them, the superweapon detonated in a blinding flash of light, a miniature sun blooming in the void. The explosion engulfed the remaining Unas ships, consuming them utterly, leaving nothing but molten fragments in its wake. The shockwave caught up to the fleeing human and ally ships, tossing them like toys in a storm. Shields flared and hulls groaned, pushed to the breaking point and beyond. In their tiny craft, Marcus and Krell were tossed about like ragdolls, the ship's inertial dampeners struggling and failing to compensate. Alarms shrieked as systems overloaded and shut down, plunging the interior into darkness. Marcus, strapped into his seat, reached out blindly and found Krell's hand, gripping it tightly as the world spun and tumbled around them. He could feel the other man's fingers, cold and clammy with fear, clinging to his own like a lifeline. The ship shuddered and bucked, the hull creaking under the strain. Marcus closed his eyes, bracing himself for the end, for the moment when the tiny craft would simply disintegrate under the onslaught. But somehow miraculously it held together. The shockwave passed, leaving them tumbling end over end through the void, battered and broken but alive. Pain lanced through Marcus' body as he struggled to lift himself up on his elbows. The harsh white lights of the hospital room stabbed at his eyes, making him squint. Beside him, the medical monitors beeped steadily, a constant reminder of his battered state. "Easy there, Captain," a gruff voice said. A firm hand pressed against Marcus's shoulder, easing him back down onto the bed. "You've been through hell and back. Give yourself a minute." Marcus blinked, his vision clearing. Admiral Jameson stood over him, his weathered face etched with lines of exhaustion and relief. The Admiral looked like he had aged a decade since Marcus had last seen him. "The Unas?" Marcus croaked, his throat raw and dry. Jameson's lips twitched into a weary smile. "Defeated. That stunt you and Krell pulled with their superweapons, it broke them. They surrendered unconditionally." His eyes snapped open. "Krell, is he—" "Alive," Jameson assured him. "Banged up, but alive. In fact—" The Admiral stepped aside. There at the foot of the bed stood Krell. The alien warrior looked as though he had been through a meat grinder, his arm in a sling, and his face a patchwork of bruises and lacerations, but he was grinning from ear to ear. "You crazy bastard," Marcus rasped, a matching grin spreading across his face. "You did it!" Krell shook his head. "We did it, Captain, you and me, your people and mine. We fought as one, and we won as one." He limped forward, clasping Marcus's hand in a firm grip. heedless of the IV lines and monitoring devices. Marcus returned the pressure, feeling the strength in Krell's fingers despite his injuries. But as he looked into his friend's eyes, Marcus saw something else there, a shadow, a hint of unease beneath the triumph. Krell's expression sobered. The Unas were just the beginning, Marcus. The precursor technology they were using, it's only a fraction of what's out there. There are more relics, more secrets waiting to be uncovered, and not all of those who seek them will be as easily defeated as the Unas. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of Krell's words were staggering. If the Unas, with their advanced ships and terrible weapons, were merely the first to tap into this ancient power, then we'll face them together, he said, his voice hardening with resolve. Humanity and your people side by side. Whatever comes, we'll meet it head-on, just like we did with the Unas. Krell nodded, his grip on Marcus's hand tightening. Side by side, he agreed, his voice ringing with the same determination. As Marcus sank back onto the pillows, his mind spun with the challenges that lay ahead. The war with the Unas was over, but the battle for the galaxy's future had only just begun. There would be new enemies to face, new threats to overcome. But as he looked at Krell, at the unwavering loyalty and courage in the alien's eyes, Marcus felt a surge of pride and hope. Humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage, not through subservience or surrender, but through the strength of its spirit and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and alliance. The road ahead would be long and hard, fraught with dangers they could scarcely imagine, but one thing was certain: humanity would never again allow itself to be underestimated or enslaved. They had taken their first steps into a larger universe. The hospital room door hisses open, startling Marcus from his thoughts. Krell stands in the doorway, his expression grave. Captain Johnson, we've been summoned. A meeting with the Earth Council and my people's representatives. Marcus nods, already swinging his legs off the bed and reaching for his uniform. His body protests, still healing from the battle, but he ignores the pain. There will be time to rest later. The walk to the council chamber is short, but each step feels heavy with the weight of recent events. The scars of the war are visible everywhere, in the hastily repaired walls, the grim faces of the people they pass, the somber atmosphere that hangs over everything like a shroud. The council chamber is packed, a sea of faces both human and alien. The air is thick with tension and unease. Marcus and Krell take their seats at the center of the room, the focus of every eye. Captain Johnson, Captain Krell. The human councilwoman at the head of the table nods to each of them in turn. We have called this meeting to discuss a matter of grave importance. She taps a control, and a holographic display springs to life above the table. It shows a star map dotted with red markers. Our intelligence reports indicate that the Unas were not the only threat lurking in the shadows. With their defeat, other hostile races are already moving to fill the power vacuum. The map zooms in on one of the red markers, revealing a fleet of strange angular ships. The Carath, the Vex, the Dominion, all massing their forces, preparing to strike at us while we are weakened. A murmur runs through the room, a palpable sense of fear and uncertainty. But the councilwoman raises her hand for silence. We cannot allow this to happen. We must act first, strike before they have a chance to reach Earth. Her gaze locks onto Marcus and Krell. Captain Johnson, Captain Krell, you have proven yourselves Earth's greatest defenders. That is why we are entrusting you with a new mission, perhaps the most important one yet. She leans forward, her voice low and urgent. You will lead a joint human-ally task force deep into uncharted space. Your mission, to seek out these threats and neutralize them by any means necessary. But there is no hesitation in either of them as they stand facing the council. We accept, Marcus says, his voice ringing with conviction. The preparations are made with a grim efficiency. A ship is readied, a crew assembled, the best and brightest from both the human and ally forces. Weapons are stocked, provisions loaded, farewell messages recorded. In the quiet of his quarters, The night before they are set to depart, Marcus allows himself a moment of reflection. He thinks of all that has happened, all that has been lost, friends, comrades, innocence. The scars on his body are nothing compared to the ones on his soul. But he also thinks of what has been gained, the respect of an alien race, the knowledge that humanity will not surrender, will not submit, no matter the odds. They will fight, and they will win, or they will die trying. The next morning, as he boards the ship that will take him and Krell to their destiny, Marcus takes one last look at Earth, blue and beautiful below them. He knows he may never see it again. But he also knows that he fights not just for Earth, but for all those who would stand against the darkness. The war may be over, but the battle goes on. But there is no fear in Marcus's heart, as he gives the order to engage the engines, only a steely resolve. Come what may, they will face it together, human and ally, united against the darkness. The ship surges forward, carrying them into the unknown, into the future, a future that is uncertain but one that they will face with courage and determination. Behind them, Earth grows smaller and smaller until it is lost to sight. Ahead, only the stars beckon, cold and indifferent. But Marcus knows that somewhere out there, the enemy awaits, and he knows that they will be ready for them. He glances at Krell, sees the same resolve in his eyes. They nod to each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Then Marcus turns back to the view screen, to the endless expanse of space before them. "Helm set, course for the Karath homeworld," he orders. "Maximum speed." The crew responds with crisp efficiency, and the ship leaps forward, engines blazing. They are alone now, a tiny island of light in an ocean of darkness. The stars blur into streaks of light as they enter FTL, hurtling towards their destiny, towards victory or oblivion. But whatever awaits them, they will face it as they always have. Together, unafraid. The ship drops out of FTL on the edge of the Karath system, the angry red star glaring balefully at them from the view screen. Marcus leans forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he takes in the tactical display. "Multiple contacts, Captain," the sensor officer reports, her voice tense. "Karath warships, a whole battle group, they're moving to intercept." Alarms blare throughout the ship as the crew rushes to their posts. The bridge hums with barely contained tension as everyone watches the Karath ships grow larger on the screens. The view screen flickers, then resolves into the image of a Karath, its chitinous face twisted into a sneer of contempt. "Human vessel," it hisses. "You have violated Karath space. Surrender now, or be destroyed." Marcus stands, his posture radiating defiance. "This is Captain Marcus Johnson of the Earth ship Retribution. We have come to deliver a message to your leadership." The Karath's eyes narrow. "Speak then, human, but choose your words carefully. They may be your last." Marcus' jaw tightens. "Your plans are known to us, your intent to attack Earth, to subjugate our people as you have so many others. But know this, we will not allow it." He takes a step forward, his voice ringing with conviction. "Earth is not the easy target you believe it to be. We have faced threats like you before, and we have emerged victorious. We will do so again." The Karath laughs, a harsh, grating sound. "Bold words, human. But you are one ship, alone and outmatched. What chance do you think you have against the might of the Karath Empire?" On cue, the rest of the task force drops out of FTL around the Retribution. Human ships and ally ships, arrayed in a phalanx of bristling weapons and shimmering shields. The Karath's eyes widen in shock and fear. Its mandibles click furiously as it turns to bark orders at its crew. But it's too late. Marcus drops back into his chair, his voice cold and hard. "All ships, open fire!" The Karath ships are powerful, their weapons advanced and deadly. But they face an enemy unlike any they have encountered before. Not just humans, but allies, bound together by the unbreakable bonds of shared struggle and sacrifice. And at the heart of it all, the Retribution, leading the charge, Marcus and Krell directing the battle with a skill and synchronicity born of hard-fought experience. It is a battle that will echo through the ages, a defining moment in the history of the galaxy, a moment when the races of the universe looked to the stars and saw not just humanity, but something more, something united, something strong, something undefeatable. And as the last Karath ship explodes into a billion shards of light, as the task force comes together in a formation of triumph and defiance, Marcus feels a swell of pride and hope unlike anything he has ever known. The first battle has been won, but the war stretches before them, vast and unknowable. There will be other fights, other foes to face. But as he looks out at his crew, at Krell, at the united ships of Earth and its allies, Marcus knows that they will face them all. Together, unafraid. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.